Hello everybody, Austin Hill Shaw here, founder of Creativity Matters and author of the Shoreline of Wonder on being creative. I'm currently on a walkabout through the city of Durango, Colorado in the southwestern portion of Colorado, my home state. Durango is a place that I've visited a handful of times, but I haven't spent a whole lot of time here. But today I just found myself in this park, this kind of beautiful park, sort of in the north central part of town. And I came across this little placard from the Rotary Foundation. And I had a really interesting experience when I was 31 years old and living in Denver. At the time, I was an architecture student, and I had a moment of insight that I needed to learn Spanish, and I needed to live outside the United States and experience a culture that was very different from my own. And there was a scholarship that came up every 2 years in my architecture school, a Rotary scholarship that offered basically a full academic year of study, as well as financial support and travel expenses and all those sorts of things. So I was applying for the scholarship at the end of my second year of architecture school, right as we were in the heat of finals and preparing for juries and all these things that we had to do for architecture. So I was pretty overloaded, I was pretty burnt out. And the other thing, I was really wanting to go to the northern part of Spain. I was wanting to go there for several reasons. One, there was a long history of amazing architecture up there. Two, they spoke the language. And three, I wanted to be by the water, quite frankly. I wanted to be by the water. I've been inland most of my life, and I wanted to be there so I could experience the ocean, to surf, and also to be amongst the Basque people. That was another aspect of it. I was really interested in the Basque people because they were some of the people that were actually active. There was active terrorism in the Basque country, and this is actually right after this is a few years before 9/11, but I would end up going to Spain 3 weeks after 9/11. So, as I was applying for the scholarship, one of the things is that I had to write 2 essays and then translate those same essays into Spanish. And at that time, I'd only had 4 months of Spanish instruction. And so the idea of translating a fairly complex essay into Spanish was near to impossible. So I asked the Spanish teacher I'd been studying over if she was willing to help me translate these essays. And I was a bit ambivalent about the whole thing because I felt like I was bending truth, like I wasn't representing myself fully. And yet, again, I was desiring and wanting to go over and learn the language. So one day during the week of finals, I took the bus over to her house and walked over there. She had this big dog, and she kind of let me in through the front gate, and she'd been gardening, and we went into her house, and she spent, I believe, around 2 hours of her time going through my attempts to translate this, which were just kind of, frankly, a giant mess. I think I used a translator too, which just made everything look kind of ridiculously bad. And anyways, she was sitting there. She did most of the work. I just sort of sat there embarrassed and feeling quite a bit guilty that I was using so much of her time. So, and again, in the back of my mind, I'm like, gosh, is this even what I'm supposed to be doing? This is, this is a goodwill organization. So I was walking out, she walked me to the front gate, and right as I walked out, her dog ran between my legs, ran out into the street, and right as this car was coming down, just like, pow! I mean, I turned away. It was just so horrifying. I looked up, and the dog was running back over from 20 yards in the other direction. So it had been hit by this car, had been run over, it's bleeding, she's screaming, and right as her husband pulls up, and both of them get in the car, immediately load the dog in the car, and I'm just left there standing there out in front of her house feeling terrible. I'm in a state of shock. And so she had been gardening, so the first thing I do is I just sort of pick up her things. And the other thing I did is I didn't know what else to do. I got out my checkbook and wrote her a check for like $1,000 because I knew this was going to be expensive, and like I said, I felt terrible. And I'm wandering along Colfax Avenue, just wondering what's happened. There's just no, don't have a cell phone. I just have no idea what's going on. And I reach a payphone, I get on there and I call her, and I just to see how things are. And she says the dog's okay. And I immediately burst into tears. I'm just like, oh, I said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. She said, we found your check. Look, you don't have to pay for this. This is not, but I was just like, I got to do something. I just feel terrible. You're helping me and I almost killed your dog. So there was sadness, there was relief, there was embarrassment. And as I walked along, kept walking back towards architecture school, which is in downtown Denver, my sadness, my embarrassment turned to anger. I felt angry about myself. I felt frustrated that here I was at the end of the semester, continuing to work even harder on a scholarship. And I also felt that I was being unethical in the way that I was presenting myself and in my abilities to speak Spanish. So I'm walking along. I get to this place called the 16th Street Mall, which is kind of a famous pedestrian mall in downtown Denver, where there's a little light rail that runs along it. And I'm walking along, and again, at this point, I'm just kind of bitter. And I see this plaza that was it's kind of like the trade center of Denver, and a statue over there. And for whatever reason, I decided to veer off the path and go and look at this statue. And I came upon a placard just like this, and it said, this statue is dedicated to Rotarians worldwide for their help in the eradication of polio. And I mean, you talk about, whoa, like the world giving you a message. And I walked around to the other side of the statue, and there's a doctor administering the polio vaccine to this child, with another little child like looking on. I'm getting all choked up. But I was like, wow, holy cow, I gotta go do this. I gotta carry this out. It was like, one of those messages. It's like, I didn't know why I was going to Spain, but I knew I had to go. And so I'm really grateful to this organization. Not only that, I'm grateful to, for lack of a better word, the universe, to saying, hey, finish that application. Because I finished the application, I won the scholarship, and I ended up going to the Basque Country again, just a few weeks after 9/11. So I just wanted to look at these, on this placard. I read this earlier when I came up here, and it was a reminder. Oh, and I also wanted to clarify, on the actual essay, what I ended up doing is I said to them, look, this is not indicative of my ability to speak Spanish right now. But by the time I go a year and a half from now, I will be proficient enough to do this. And again, I was able to be honest, and I said, my Spanish teacher helped me with this, and she was also, and she was instrumental in encouraging that I could actually learn the language based on what I put forth within the class. So I was able to be honest. I ended up getting the scholarship, and I ended up going on to Spain, and I ended up staying there for almost 2 years. And that in and of itself was really instrumental in terms of the way I see the world these days. So I just wanted to go over what's listed here, because it's actually an amazing way of thinking about things. It's called the Four-Way Test of the way we think, say, or do. And it's basically a way to think about the decisions that we make. And it's a super simple system. The first one is it the truth? Is it the truth, right? If you're not telling the truth, as I was not fully telling the truth in the beginning, but then again told it, that eats away at your consciousness, at your conscience, right? Second, is it fair to all who are concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendship? And finally, 4, will it be beneficial to all concerned? This is a great way of thinking about the decisions that we make in our creative projects. There's so many ways in which there's so many ways that we make decisions that sometimes are based on what we think that we should be doing, or based on our egos, or based on what we think a project's gonna get us, or maybe the money that it's gonna make us. But if we start to pull ourselves out of really this fundamental sense of goodwill, our projects start to go astray. Our projects start to go awry, and we actually cut ourselves off, in my experience, from the creative life force. And unfortunately, we have other experiences that when we sort of, go off the straight path, we sort of get brought back. so that we can, again, live a life full of integrity. That's another thing about when you lead a creative life, how your integrity always comes up over and over again. How you can get tested to go one way, and if you do that and it doesn't feel right, you know, you got to make amends, you got to reestablish integrity, you got to right the things that have been wronged. So I hope this has been helpful to you. It was amazing for me to stumble across this morning and be reminded of that, you know, some 13 years ago when that experience happened. Again, I was 31 years old, and I guess probably 30 years old at the time. Anyways, this is Austin Hill Shaw, founder of Creativity Matters, reminding you to connect deeply, to make a difference, and to inspire creativity in others. Thanks for joining me.